Part 6 of the Dark and Hidden Truths Behind Antidepressants. This video is a continuation of Part 5, where I start examining clinical studies and meta-analyses funded by Big Pharma that hide the severe side effects. In another of Eli Lilly and Co.'s clinical studies, a 19-year-old healthy college student with no previous incident of mental health started taking the SNRI duloxetine as part of the clinical study to help pay her college tuition, and she sadly hung herself in a laboratory run by Lilly, and it turns out that this was missing from the FDA's files, as well as records of 4 other volunteers who are known to have committed suicide. In total, 19 clinical studies included data on instances of self-harm and suicide, but less than half of the harms were reported in the published articles available to the public. And that was in total 21 out of 50 events on antidepressants and 2 out of 4 events on placebo. And the researchers only discovered this by requesting the information and looking through all the data themselves. In trials of duloxetine and Zoloft, only 33 of 45 cases of suicidal ideation, attempt, or injury listed in the trial register were mentioned in the published public reports. Another meta-study review reported no increased risk of suicidal behavior with Prozac compared to placebo, but an increased risk of suicidal ideation or attempting suicide was observed relative to placebo for Paxil, Zoloft, Celexa, and Effexor. Some people try to discredit these meta-analyses that highlight the risks by saying that they selectively choose some trials but don't include others. And the reason this happens is nearly 80% of studies on randomized controlled trials for approved antidepressants between 2007 and March 2014 had some sort of industry tie, either through sponsorship or conflicts of interest, and many raised too many concerns to include. For the 53 meta-analyses where the author was not an industry employee and did not report any conflicts of interest, 25% still had unreported conflicts of interest. The antidepressant studies that were written by researchers with conflict of interest were 22 times less likely than other meta-studies to include negative statements about the drugs. Those with industry ties had much more favorable coverage and fewer caveats. Conversely, when no employees were involved, almost 50% had caveats. The rate of bias in the results is similar to a 2006 study examining industry impact on clinical trials of psychiatric medications, which found that industry-sponsored trials reported favorable outcomes 78% of the time, compared with 48% of the time in independently funded trials. The researchers suggest that when you factor out these biased studies influenced by Big Pharma, the data suggests that antidepressants increase the risk of self-harm in adults. Should I examine the toxic ingredients in antidepressants next, or cover their side effects?